I woke up before dawn to the sound of something scratching and crying under my window. At first, I thought it was just raccoons again messing with my trash cans, but the sound was different. It was deeper, heavier, like something big was moving around. I rubbed my eyes, pulled on my flannel jacket, and stepped quietly to the window. What I saw made my chest tighten so hard I couldn't breathe. There, on my wooden porch, stood a lynx. Her fur was soaked from the dew-covered grass. Her eyes glowed golden in the dim light, and tears mixed with dirt streaked her face. But what shook me the most wasn't the lynx herself. Clamped gently in her jaws, hanging limp like a rag, was a tiny lynx cub. For a second, I just stood there, frozen, staring through the glass. My brain kept screaming danger, danger, but my heart whispered something different. I slowly opened the front door, and the creak of the hinges made her flinch back a step. Her ears flattened against her head, but she didn't run. She placed the cub down on the rough wood boards and looked at me, really looked at me. Her chest heaved up and down, and she let out a sound I never thought lynxes could make. It was a low, broken sob. My legs felt weak. I stepped onto the porch, keeping my hands in front of me so she wouldn't think I was a threat. The smell of pine mixed with the sharp, iron scent of blood. I could see it now. The cub's side was covered in dark, sticky blood, matted into his soft gray fur. His tiny paws curled inwards. His breathing was so shallow that I almost thought he wasn't alive. The lynx backed away to the edge of my porch and sat down heavily, watching my every move with those wild, desperate eyes. Her chest kept shaking with each ragged breath. I crouched down slowly and reached out my hand toward the cub. I expected her to attack me, to rip my arm apart before I could touch her baby. But she just sat there, trembling. I touched the cub's side. He was still warm. My fingers felt a faint, uneven movement under his ribs. He was alive, but barely. I whispered under my breath, "Please, little guy, hold on." I didn't know what to do. There was no wildlife rescue nearby. The nearest vet who handled wild animals was an hour away, and I didn't even know if he would take a lynx cub. I looked back at the mother lynx. She didn't move. Her ears were down, and her eyes glistened with tears. In that moment, I realized she was leaving her baby with me. She was giving up, trusting me to do something she couldn't. I felt my throat tighten with emotion. I looked down at the cub again, watching his chest flutter so weakly it was like the last flicker of a dying candle. My heart raced as I ran inside, grabbed a towel, and gently wrapped him up. When I came back out, the mother lynx was still sitting there, unmoving. Her eyes locked with mine, pleading and empty at the same time. I whispered, "I'll try to save him. I promise." She closed her eyes for a moment, like she was gathering every ounce of her strength to stand up. Then she turned and, with one last glance over her shoulder, walked down the dirt driveway into the dark forest. I watched her disappear between the pines, feeling something deep in my chest break apart. I looked down at the tiny life in my arms. He wasn't breathing anymore. My hands shook as I pressed 2 fingers against his ribs. Nothing. But then, just as tears welled in my eyes, I felt the tiniest twitch. A faint, almost invisible flutter under his ribs. He was still alive. Barely. And now everything depended on me. I carried the cub into my house, trying not to trip over the boots and tools scattered across the floor. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped him. I laid him on the old kitchen table, still wrapped in the towel. He didn't move. His breathing was so faint I could barely see his chest rise. I turned on the bright overhead light and grabbed my first aid kit from the cabinet. My mind raced, flipping through every training I ever had as a park ranger. But all those courses were for dogs, horses, cattle, never for a wild lynx cub. I unwrapped the towel. Blood seeped from a deep gash along his side, just behind his front leg. It looked like a bite wound, maybe a coyote or another lynx. I pressed a gauze pad against it, trying not to cry when he flinched weakly under my touch. "Come on, little guy. Stay with me." I grabbed my phone with bloody fingers and scrolled to Jeff's number. He was the only vet within 50 miles who ever treated wildlife. My thumb hovered over the call button as panic tightened my chest. Finally, I pressed it. Jeff answered on the 3rd ring. His voice was groggy. I forgot it was barely 5 in the morning. "Hey man, sorry to call so early," I said, my voice shaking. "I've got an emergency. A lynx cub. He's been attacked or something. He's bleeding bad." There was a pause. Then Jeff sighed heavily. "Look, I can't help you with that," he said. "You know the law. I'm not licensed for wild cats. Call Fish and Game. He's dying, Jeff, I pleaded. Please. He'll be dead before they even pick up the phone. I could hear him shifting on the other end. I'm sorry, he said softly. If I touch him, I could lose my license. Try keeping pressure on the wound and keep him warm. Then he hung up. I slammed the phone down on the table so hard it rattled the old coffee mugs lined up by the sink. Tears burned in my eyes, but I forced myself to keep pressing the gauze to the cub's side. His breaths were getting shorter and further apart. Think. I scrolled to another number in my phone. Jessie. She worked at a wildlife rehab center 2 hours south. She was the one who taught me how to splint a broken wing on an owl once. My thumb shook as I called her. She answered immediately, her voice alert despite the hour. Hey, what's wrong? Jessie, I said, my voice breaking. I've got a lynx cub here. He's bleeding bad. I don't know what to do. Jeff won't help. Where are you? She asked quickly. At my place. Near Pine Creek Road. Okay. Listen to me carefully. Is the wound deep? Yes. Really deep. It's behind his leg. He's barely breathing. I heard her take a shaky breath. Then her voice hardened with focus. You need to keep pressure on it and keep him warm. Do you have any oxygen there? No. Nothing like that. Okay. Then wrap him tighter in that towel and get him in the truck. You need to bring him here right now. I can't. It'll take me 2 hours to get to you. There was silence for a second. Then she whispered something under her breath. If he's losing that much blood, he won't make it 2 hours. We need to operate within the hour or he'll die. Her words sank into me like ice water. Operate. An hour. What do I do, Jessie? Bring him here as fast as you can. I'll call Dr. Simmons to meet us at the clinic. Drive safe, but hurry. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. My chest felt tight. I hung up and looked down at the cub. His little chest barely moved under the towel. I grabbed my keys, shoved on my boots, and lifted him gently in my arms. His head lolled back, eyes half closed. Please hold on. Just a little longer. Outside, the sky was starting to brighten with the first pale light of dawn. I laid him carefully on the passenger seat, wrapping the towel tighter around him to keep his body warm. As I turned the key in the ignition, I glanced toward the forest. The lynx mother was nowhere in sight. For a moment, I wondered if she was still out there, watching, praying in her own way for her baby to survive. I pulled out onto the dirt road, tires spinning over loose gravel. My heart pounded so hard I thought I would faint. As the sun began to rise over the distant hills, I drove into the morning light with a single thought burning in my mind. Don't die on me. Not now. I sped down the dirt road, gravel spraying out from under my tires. The sky was turning a pale gold as the sun rose behind the trees. My heart hammered in my chest so hard it hurt. Every few seconds, I reached over to touch the cub, just to feel that tiny flutter of his breathing. Halfway down Pine Creek Road, my phone buzzed. I put it on speaker without taking my eyes off the road. Where are you now? Jessie asked. Her voice was tight with urgency. Almost to the highway, I said. Maybe 30 minutes out. Good. Dr. Simmons is on his way. Drive safe. I didn't answer. My eyes blurred with tears as I thought about the lynx mother. I wondered if she was following me through the trees, silent and desperate. 10 minutes later, I saw a flash of red and blue lights ahead. My stomach dropped. A forest ranger truck was parked across the road, blocking the way. Officer Daniels stood in front of it, arms crossed. He was the only ranger on duty this early. I pulled over, my heart slamming against my ribs. He walked up to my window and leaned down. Morning, he said flatly. What's the rush? Daniels, please, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. I have an injured lynx cub. He's dying. I need to get him to the clinic. His eyes narrowed. You have a wildcat in your truck? Yes. Please. Let me go? You know that's illegal, he said, his voice cold. Fish and Game needs to process any wildlife injuries. You can't just take it upon yourself. I felt my pulse roar in my ears. Daniels, he's going to die. Fish and Game will take hours. Jessie is waiting with a vet. Please. He shook his head slowly. Step out of the vehicle. No. Please, I begged, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Step out. Now. He reached for his radio. I didn't think. I slammed my foot on the gas. The truck lurched forward, and Daniels jumped back, shouting something I couldn't hear. My tires skidded over the gravel as I swerved past his truck and roared onto the paved road. My hands trembled on the wheel. My chest burned with fear and adrenaline. He's going to come after us, I said out loud, glancing at the cub. The cub let out a tiny gasp, his mouth opening as he struggled to breathe. Panic shot through me. No, no, no. Stay with me. I grabbed my phone again, called Jessie. What happened? She asked immediately. Daniel's tried to stop me. I had to go around him. He's calling fish and game. There was silence. Then her voice came, hard and fast. Just keep driving. Don't stop for anything. How's the cub? He's not breathing right. His mouth's open. He's gasping. She swore under her breath. You need to keep his head elevated. Lay him so his head is higher than his body. And drive faster. I adjusted the towel, propping his head up on my jacket. His tiny tongue lolled out of his mouth as he wheezed for air. I pressed harder on the gas pedal. The trees blurred past, and the morning sun burned through the mist. I could hear sirens now behind me, faint but growing louder. My heart felt like it would explode. I kept my eyes on the road, whispering over and over. Please, just hold on. Please. The cub let out another thin, rasping gasp. His chest shuddered under the towel. I gripped the wheel tighter, my vision tunneling. Don't die. Not now. We're so close. Up ahead, I saw the sign for the turnoff to Jessie's clinic. Relief surged through me, but it was drowned out by terror as the cub's body convulsed in a tiny, silent cough. His breathing stopped completely. No. Please, God. Breathe. Come on, little guy. Breathe. I skidded into the gravel parking lot of Jessie's clinic, my tires spraying dirt everywhere. I slammed the truck into park, grabbed the cub, and ran toward the doors. Jessie was already there, holding them open with her foot, her hair tied back and eyes focused like steel. Give him to me, she said quickly. I handed her the tiny bundle. His chest wasn't moving. Jessie pressed her ear to his mouth as we rushed down the narrow hallway lined with wildlife posters. He's not breathing, I whispered, my voice breaking. Please, Jessie. She didn't answer. She pushed open the surgery room door with her shoulder. Dr. Simmons was inside, already gloved and masked. His white hair stuck out under the surgical cap. Let's get started, he said in a low voice. They laid the cub on a metal table under bright lights. My knees felt weak, so I grabbed the counter for balance. Jessie hooked up a tiny oxygen mask to his face while Simmons checked the wound. Deep bite, probably from another predator. He's lost a lot of blood. Can you save him? I asked, my voice shaking. He didn't look up. Give me the plasma. Now. Jessie moved quickly, pulling supplies from cabinets. I watched as Simmons began cleaning the wound, his hands steady and precise. The cub's body was so small under the surgical drape it barely looked real. I heard a noise outside the clinic door. I turned and through the glass saw movement. My heart stopped. The lynx mother was there, pacing back and forth on the gravel. Her eyes glowed in the clinic lights, and her ears were pinned back. Then she let out a sound so haunting my blood turned cold. A deep, echoing wail that rattled the windows. Jessie looked up from the table. Is that the mother? Yeah, I whispered. She followed us here. The lynx kept pacing, crying out again and again. Each time her cry shook something loose inside me. I closed my eyes, and memories rushed up like a flood. I was 6 years old again, standing in the hospital hallway. My mother was inside, hooked up to tubes and machines. I remembered clutching Dad's hand so tight my fingers went numb. I remembered the last time I saw her eyes open. She smiled at me, even though she was in pain. That same desperate love shone in the lynx's eyes outside the glass. I opened my eyes to see Jessie inserting an 4 into the cub's leg. Simmons started stitching the torn muscle, his brow furrowed with focus. Blood stained his gloves and the metal table. His pulse is fading, Jessie said, her voice tight. Please, I whispered, gripping the counter harder. Please don't let him die. Simmons didn't look up. His hands moved fast, stitching, clamping, cleaning. The cub's little chest fluttered once, twice, then stopped moving completely. No, Jessie whispered. No, no, no. Simmons pressed 2 fingers to the cub's ribs, then started chest compressions with his thumb. Jessie grabbed a syringe and injected something into his foreline. Come on, little guy, Jessie whispered. Fight. The mother lynx howled again, louder this time. I could hear her claws scraping against the door. My chest burned with grief, so strong I thought I would collapse. Tears streamed down my face as I watched the cub's tiny body jerk with each compression. Please, God, I whispered under my breath. Please don't take him. Not like this. For a moment, everything was silent. Simmons stopped moving. Jessie held her breath. The only sound was the muffled sobbing wail of the lynx outside. Then the cub took a tiny, rasping breath. His chest rose and fell once, then again. Jessie let out a shaky laugh as tears filled her eyes. "He's back," she whispered. "He's back." Simmons didn't look up. "Start fluids," he said calmly. Jessie moved quickly, hooking up a saline bag to the fore. I looked out the glass door again. The mother lynx had sat down now, her sides heaving with each breath. Her golden eyes locked on mine, and for a moment, everything else fell away. I saw her pain, her hope, her endless love for that cub. I sank to the floor, my back against the wall, shaking with relief and sorrow all mixed together. I closed my eyes and saw my mother smile again, felt her hand brushing my cheek, and I realized that love never dies. It just changes shape. The cub let out a weak, wheezing cry from the table. Jessie stroked his head gently. Simmons finished the last suture and stepped back, his face hidden behind the mask. He turned to me, pulling off his gloves, and for a long moment he just stood there, silent, staring into my eyes. I sat in the waiting room, my head in my hands, feeling like time had stopped. The smell of antiseptic and old wood mixed in the air, making my stomach twist. I kept thinking about that morning, the dew on the grass, her eyes looking at me through the dim light, full of a pain I couldn't understand. Jessie finally walked out after what felt like hours. She pulled off her gloves, wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, and let out a long breath. "He's stable," she said softly. "He made it." I let out a sob I didn't know I was holding in. Tears spilled down my cheeks, and I covered my face with my hands. Relief and exhaustion crashed into me all at once. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice hoarse. Jessie sat down next to me, her scrubs stained with blood and saline. "But there's something you need to know," she said. Her voice was calm but heavy. "His leg, the bite severed nerves. He won't ever be able to hunt or climb properly again." I wiped my face on my sleeve and looked at her, trying to process her words. "So what does that mean for him?" "It means he can't go back to the wild," she said quietly. "He wouldn't survive out there." I sat back in the chair, feeling the old wood creak under my weight. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Outside the window, I saw movement. The mother lynx was there, pacing along the edge of the parking lot. Her fur shimmered in the early sunlight. She turned her head and looked straight at me through the glass. "Can I see him?" I asked Jessie, my voice trembling. She nodded and stood up. "Follow me." We walked down the narrow hallway, past stacked cages with recovering owls, hawks, and raccoons. The smell of animals and cleaning solution filled the space. Jessie pushed open a small door at the end of the hall. Inside, under a warm heat lamp, the lynx cub lay on soft blankets. He was breathing slowly, each rise and fall of his tiny chest more precious than gold. I knelt beside him, careful not to touch his stitches. His eyes fluttered open for a moment, and he let out a weak, raspy mew. I smiled through my tears. "Hey, little guy," I whispered. "You're safe now." Jessie stood silently behind me. "We'll have to figure out placement for him," she said. "Maybe a sanctuary or permanent wildlife center." I shook my head slowly, my hand hovering above his head. "Let me keep him here. I can build an enclosure, take care of him. I owe it to her." Jessie hesitated. "You know it's a lifetime commitment, right? He'll never be fully independent." "I know," I said, but she trusted me. "I can't send him away." She placed a hand on my shoulder and squeezed gently. "I'll talk to Fish and Game. It'll take some paperwork, but I think we can make it happen." Over the next few days, I barely slept. Between feeding him small amounts of special formula and giving him pain meds, I spent hours sitting beside his pen, watching his chest rise and fall, listening to the wind in the pines outside my window. Each morning, I looked out into the trees, hoping to see her again. But she never came. Then, one morning just before sunrise, I stepped out with my coffee, feeling the chill of the mountain air on my skin. I looked up at the ridge above my cabin and froze. She was there. The mother lynx stood tall and silent, the breeze ruffling her thick fur. The sky behind her was streaked with pale pink and orange. She looked down at me, her golden eyes glowing in the dawn light. But she wasn't alone. Beside her, leaning against her leg, was another lynx cub. This one looked stronger, healthier. Its fur was thick and clean, its body lean and sturdy. The cub pressed into her side, looking down at me with wide, curious eyes. My chest tightened so hard I had to clutch the porch railing. Tears burned in my eyes. She had another baby. Another chance. We stood there, locked in silent understanding. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying with it the smell of damp earth and blooming wildflowers. She blinked slowly, then turned her gaze to her new cub, nuzzling its head softly. For a long moment, I thought she would walk away without looking back. But then she lifted her head and looked at me one last time. Her eyes were calm, almost peaceful. She turned and walked into the forest, her cub trotting behind her. Their silhouettes disappeared into the trees as the first rays of sun spilled over the ridge. I stood there long after they were gone, listening to the morning birds waking up in the trees. I turned and looked back at the small lynx cub sleeping in his pen by the cabin. His fur glowed golden in the sunrise. I still don't know why she chose me. Maybe it wasn't about saving her cub. Maybe it was about saving me.